For the power of truth, this is the Glad Report.
Today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, is dedicated to the effect climate change has on women, particularly the poverty statistics of women. Without further ado, I'm glad with the report. So obviously, just following the presidential draft declaration, we are aware that 84 of the 116 districts, which includes 9.8 million people who are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance to support lives. So that statistic, to me, I feel lacks specificity, which I'm trying to bring onto the table with this episode. We know that 51% of the people in this country are women, so women hold the majority stake. Also, of the labour force, all in all, of the country, 2/3 of it is contributing towards the agricultural sector. And then we know 78% of that 2/3 is of the women specifically. So women hold the majority stake in the agricultural sector, agricultural conversation. In that regard, they really are at the epicenter, and we should focus on their statistics. We know that the female literacy rate is 7% lower than the male literacy rate. We also know that female households are much more likely, according to the Central Statistics Office, to be impoverished. And then also, according to the Global Land Tool Network, between the years 2000 and 2019, only 13% of land deeds were issued to women. So in as much as women do majority of the labour with regards to agriculture, they're not the ones who necessarily own the land. Yes, indeed. Why is this problematic? In the event that a female farmer seeks financial aid, she would have to apply for it, and then without collateral, she can't necessarily have any bargaining power, and in many, if not most, or everything altogether, in most cases they are rejected without collateral. So that does make women very, very vulnerable, all in all, with all those negative statistics. It makes them vulnerable in the case of a spouse's death, a spouse's divorce. They could be victims of property grabbing, which in some cultures in Zambia is still very acceptable. Also, early marriages become rampant because if they can't feed themselves properly, they think it's more lucrative and more logical to give off their children at a young age. So early marriages, which lead to teenage pregnancies which could lead to unhealthy pregnancies altogether, and unhealthy and stunted growth altogether of children. So it just leads to a repetitive cycle of poverty. Yes, indeed. Zambia is not necessarily unique when it comes to this agricultural gender gap, where men, in as much as they don't hold the majority stake, but have more of the income. It's a global issue, a continental as well as global issue of agriculture in that regard. So a movement known as ecofeminism has emerged. Please don't heckle me in the comments. I know every mention of feminism does rub people off the wrong way. But ecofeminism, which is just like a portmanteau of ecological and feminism, so how gender equality is influenced by the environment. Yes, so it could be geographical, your community, all those things influence how your life circumstances as a woman, as a non-male, are going to happen, are going to play out. Yes, indeed. Historically, even with women, they are typically placed at the back burner. Even the delegates, whenever delegates are present, a very low stake is of the women, which is problematic, because it was only in COP11 that women issues were explicitly mentioned as to move from the periphery and not to be talked about, to actually move to some sort of center conversation. So I think just the delayment in realizing that gender is part and parcel of this climate change issue is definitely detrimental, deleterious in how quickly we can move the needle in terms of creating impact. Also, if we saw the presidential announcement of the draft declaration, not only for Zambia but also Malawi, Zimbabwe, particularly for Zambia in our action plan, there was no explicit, I think it was only on a certain part, but no really explicit mention, explicit attention was paid to the plight of women and how they're to be the most impacted with the aforementioned statistics I've given you today. So I think there needs to be a shift in focus to realize that women are at the epicenter of this conversation and really require attention. Even the budget, they require special mention so they get the attention that they require. Thank you very much. Without further ado, I'm Gad with the report.
For the power of truth, this is the Glad Report.